Okay, welcome to the Geography of Religion week. An exciting topic ahead of us as we move into a new week here. Some of the learning objectives that we'll take a look at for this week are defining the differences among religions, as well as the basic tenets of the world's principal religions, and then to locate their primary regional expressions. I also like us to be able to discuss how and why the world's religions became distributed as they are today, and then also to analyze how globalization has affected the practice of religion. From there, we'll discuss some of the ways in which natural environment shapes and is shaped by religious beliefs and practices. So seeing some crossover there with some of our previous units on language and politics, and also describe how religions have left their particular mark on cultural landscapes. So starting off with the theme, the first one of the 5 main themes of region. We have a neat map in our book of the world distribution of major religions. There's a lot of overlap that exists on this map or in the world that cannot be shown on a map of this scale. And so this is just an attempt to show which faith is dominant in these particular regions. And because religion, like all of culture, has strong territorial association, there are many religious cultural regions. The most basic kind of formal religious culture region is depicted through spatial distribution of organized religions. And the boundaries of formal religious cultural regions, like most cultural borders, are rarely sharp. So that's also important to keep in mind when we look at some of the basic percentages of population in our world, or major religions, and number of adherents to those faiths. And one interesting thing to point out is that the third largest group here, unaffiliated, is composed of those who are not affiliated with any established faith, and that's over 16% of the world. And note that Judaism is a prominent religion in the US, but it does not rank among the major world religions in terms of number of adherents. A very small percentage there at only 0.2%. Next, to take a look at our next major geographic theme of mobility, and particularly in terms of how do religions spread. There's various different forms of diffusion, particularly expansion, hierarchical, and relocation. So expansion diffusion refers to the spread of something from increasing quantities and the connectivities. For example, Christianity initially spread through the Roman Empire using system of imperial roads throughout the empire. And then diffusion can also spread via established hierarchies that disseminate beliefs from the top down. This is how Confucianism often spread in ancient China. And diffusion of religions can also occur with the bodily relocation of an individual or group, such as with Buddhism's relatively recent arrival in North America, or in fact how Buddhism spread to Tibet in the 8th century via Bodhidharma from India. Here's a neat map on the origin and diffusion of the 5 major world religions out of your textbook. We can see their main core areas and the different routes that they have followed through time. Christianity and Islam, the 2 great proselytic monotheistic faiths, arose in Semitic Southwest Asia and spread widely through the Old World. And then Hinduism and Buddhism both originated in the northern reaches of the Indian subcontinent and spread throughout southeastern Eurasia. The Taoic religions originated in East Asia, Confucianism, Taoism, Shintoism, and they relocated with Chinese and Japanese migration regionally, and more recently to North and South America as well as Europe. Here we have some of the top pilgrimage destinations around the world. And taken together, these 14 sites attract over 100 million visitors annually. So a very significant form of mobility there as well. Next, looking at the major theme of globalization in terms of the geography of religion. An interesting point being the rise of evangelical Protestantism in Latin America. This was very strong in my tour of South America a few years ago. And it's interesting to point out that in Latin American Caribbean, in the Caribbean, although Roman Catholicism has dominated since the time of the Iberian conquerors in the late 1400s, Catholicism has been on the decline in the region in recent decades. For instance, here in Brazil, Brazil is the largest Catholic country in the world in terms of population, but there as well, Catholicism has been on the decline. More and more Latin Americans believe that the Catholic Church has failed to keep in touch with their needs and concerns of contemporary urban societies. So some crossover there with the rates of urbanization that we've looked at in previous weeks. And another interesting part of globalization and religious geography is looking at religion on the internet. Gathering together regularly in a holy place, a mosque, temple, church, or shrine is at the heart of most organized religions. And now you can sit in front of a computer and read a holy book, submit and read online prayers, engage in theological debate, or even watch broadcasts of religious services. This is also very common down in Latin America now as well. Even illness, invalidism, or pressures of a busy life need not to present a barrier to worship. However, detractors argue that the solitary worship online erodes from the place-based communities that are at the heart of many religions gathering together. So it's going to be interesting over the coming decades, century, years ahead to look at see what happens with religion and how it's combining with globalization, especially vis-a-vis the internet. Next, we'll take a look at nature-culture dynamics within the geography of religion. And two beautiful places here that have evolved into a sacred space. The reddish sandstone Uluru, or Ayers Rock in Central Australia on the left here, which is sacred in Aboriginal animism of there. And on the right, the snowy Mount Shasta, which maybe some of you have seen in Northern California, which is now venerated by over 30 New Age cults. And so these are just the tip of the mountain, so to speak, of representing to us some of the main functions of religions, and is the maintenance of harmony between people and the physical environment. Physical environmental factors, particularly natural hazards and disasters, exert a powerful influence on the development of religions. Environmental influence is most readily apparent in animistic faiths, although it is evident in major Western religions as well. Rivers, mountains, trees, forests, and rocks often achieve a status of a sacred space, even in great religions. As well, we can look at some of the impacts of belief systems on plants and animals, and in that every religion expresses itself in food choices to one degree or another. Certain plants and livestock and products derived from them are in demand because of their roles in religious ceremonies and traditions. So for instance, some Christians drink wine during Holy Communion, and this has contributed to the diffusion of grape growing, viticulture. And also religious taboos can be absorbing barriers and prevent diffusion of foods, drinks, and practices that would violate the taboo, for instance, caffeine and Mormonism. And some religions have specific guidelines for food preparation and consumption that influence plants and animals and cultures. For instance, in Judaism, use of kosher foods, and with Muslims, halal foods, and with Hindus, the sacred cows. So in this picture, the harvesting of wood for cremations contributes significantly to the ongoing deforestation in Nepal. You see some significant stacks of wood there used. And this ties into cultural landscape as well, the fifth major theme here that we'll look at. I mean, particularly in the form of religious structures in various different religions, which are the most obvious contributions from religions to the landscapes. Are buildings erected to house divinities or to shelter worshippers. On the left here, we have a Muslim mosque in northern Nigeria. Going right from there up top is St. Basil's Cathedral on Red Square in Moscow, Russia, reflecting the highly ornate Russian landscape presence. In contrast, the plain brown chapel in South Dakota demonstrates the opposite tendency of favoring visual simplicity by Protestants. And lastly, the very ornate Hindu temple in New Delhi, India, offers yet another sacred landscape and iteration of a strong cultural landscape presence. And a big part of the geography of religion is looking at sacred spaces. And we see the term space come up a lot in geography, both in terms of social space and as well as physical spatial characteristics. Spatial sacred spaces we can think of as areas recognized by a religious group as worthy of devotion, loyalty, esteem, or even fear, to the extent that they become sought out and avoided, inaccessible to non-believers sometimes, or removed from economic use at other times as well. So these pictures here represent some strong iterations of sacred space. The three so-called Abrahamic faiths of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam arose in the same place, and thus their adherents revere some of the same holy sites. So on the left you have Mount Sinai in northern Africa, which is where Moses is said to have received the Ten Commandments as the Israelites continued their journey out of Egypt, and it is also mentioned several times in the Quran of Islam. And then on the right here, where Jews are praying to at the wall and at the western wall in Jerusalem of Israel, and standing above the wall on the site of the destroyed Jewish temple is one of the holiest sites for Muslims, and it's the golden capped mosque called the Dome of the Rock. And cemeteries are also generally regarded as a type of sacred space, and this includes tombs, and perhaps the most impressive religious structure in the world is the Taj Mahal in Agra, India. It was originally built as a Muslim tomb. So maybe in your travels around the Bay these days, and even leaving the college on the way to the highway, perhaps you can see evidence of sacred spaces and let the class know what you see. Some very interesting forms in El Sobrani and throughout the East Bay. We could also look beyond that and think about places where we've traveled, what forms of religious imprints we've seen on the cultural and physical landscape. Okay, well, we'll take this into another short video in the discussion boards to keep these questions continued. Thanks.